line with us is Michael Cohen, the principal at Crisis X, a crisis management company. Previously was the personal attorney of Donald Trump, executive VP of the Trump Organization, special counsel to Donald Trump. You may recall his previous book, Disloyal, a memoir. He hosts the Mea Culpa with Michael Cohen podcast, by the way. He has a new book out. It's called Revenge. The website is revenge-thebook.com. His Twitter handle is Michael Cohen212. Michael, welcome back to the program. I'm curious about your role as kind of a fixer or consigliere or whatever you want to call it in the Trump Organization. To what extent was the Trump Organization back in the day run along the lines of other more mainstream, typically Italian, but there are obviously versions unique to different ethnicities, crime families in New York City?
Clear about this. Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, was not Mafia Inc. It was not Crime Central. Donald behaved like a mafia boss. He had learned that early on in his career when he was under the tutelage of the very infamous Roy Cohn, his lawyer, who represented many high-ranking mafia individuals. Donald has no email address. He was always taught not to have his fingerprints on anything. Now, again, what we do have to remember is that the Trump Organization is a mom and pop, myopic real estate development company. I mean, there were no dead bodies, which is a line that for some reason media tries to use a lot. Michael Cohen knew where all the skeletons were located. If we're referring to which contractor we didn't pay or which law firm, which was virtually all of them, that we didn't pay and for what reason, yes, that I did. Did we sue people based upon defamation? Yes. Did we try to renegotiate contracts post the signature? Yes. But as it relates to anything on par with being a mafia-style family with murder and extortion and racketeering, the answer is that never happened.
Yeah, so Trump is not Tony Soprano.
He's about the same size, but no.
He's basically a small-time crook. To what extent was Donald Trump saved by Russians and Saudis, particularly in the 90s after his company went south?
Okay, so I was not with Donald in the 90s. In fact, I was just finishing law school and starting my legal career. I started with Trump in 2006, 2007. Now, Eric Trump, who is by far the dumbest of all of the children, made a couple of comments about how Russians are big buyers of Trump apartments, condominiums, whether it's in New York, Florida, or wherever else that they may be. First of all, that's just not a true statement. And as far as Russia bailing Donald out in the 1990s, or even in 2006, 2007, when I joined, there are some Russians that ended up buying in his properties, but percentage-wise, it's de minimis. And the same holds true for Saudi Arabia. I mean, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a full-floor apartment at one of the Trump properties across the street from the United Nations. But then again, so do many different countries. Mm-hmm. Again, it is a de minimis number. And these sort of promotional statements made by people like Eric or Don Jr., they don't do anything within which to hold Donald accountable, responsible, and for the crimes that he actually has committed.
So what are the crimes that he has committed that concern you? What are as a guy who was inside the Trump Organization, and now Donald Trump is a major force in American politics, and is embracing fascist governments elsewhere and around the world. It certainly did as president. What are the things that you think Americans need to be warned about, need to know about?
Well, let's begin with obstruction of justice. That was something that I witnessed and I was the recipient of when I was testifying before the House Oversight Committee and 6 other congressional committees. What Donald Trump does using his social media platform is he makes it very uncomfortable for you. He puts your life in jeopardy. And again, he doesn't care about anybody or anything other than himself and what his ultimate goal is. But then you also have on top of that witness tampering. We also see election fraud. We see tax fraud. We see bank fraud. You have the insurrection on January 6th, the DOJ looking into that, the espionage violations that took place at Mar-a-Lago not too long ago, lying to law enforcement, which is a 1001 violation, which he has done since early on, since probably around 2018. So these are just some of the things that are currently facing Donald Trump, things that the American public should know, because these are the things that will destroy democracy if, in fact, left unchecked.
Donald Trump is still supporting basically the Russian perspective in most regards, in many regards anyway. You know, I saw in your book that you're talking about the Steele dossier. Do you think that Putin has something on him, or do you know, like the P tapes, or do you think that, or do you think that Trump is simply still hoping to cut a deal with Putin for $1 billion property in Moscow, or is it just that, you know, he loves dictators because that's the way he wanted to run our country?
Exactly. He looks at Putin almost as a teacher, right? Something that Donald used to say repeatedly in the office was, and it was a Putin, originally Stalin, but Putin adopted comment, that it doesn't matter who you vote for. All that matters is who's counting the vote. And that's what we're seeing now with the election denying. Donald was denying 2020 results before the election even took place. In fact,
was doing that in 2016.
Was many months before. Yes, it was many months that if, in fact, I lose, it's only because it was rigged. What he's doing is he's already putting into the guts of the individuals who support him the notion that if he loses, it has to be a rigged system, and that your right to your vote doesn't mean anything and it doesn't count. Now, I do take in chapter 1 of my book, which I think is really a must read for individuals who want to understand what happens when you have a president, an immoral president, who retains the services of a equally complicit and duplicitous attorney general, that they weaponize the Department of Justice to go against their critics. That's what they did, as far as to me. And my hope is by the end of the book, you will see that the story that the media has made of me and that the story you think you know about me is in fact not accurate at all. And this is what happens. This is what happens, again, when a president weaponizes the Justice Department to go against the critics.
I remember when, you know, you got out of jail, and then they basically wanted you to sign a document saying that you wouldn't publish a book, and you refused to do that, you know, under advice from your attorney. But just, I mean, you know, you're an attorney too. It's like, please surrender your First Amendment right. You refused to do that, and immediately they shackled you and hauled you back off to jail. And I remember thinking, oh my God, you know, Bill Barr is well, he's just as corrupt as he was in the 90s, in 1992, when he shut down the entire Iran-Contra investigation to hide the crimes of the Bush and the Reagan and Bush administration back in the day.
And did so as well as with the Mueller investigation and the memo. This is who Bill Barr is. So the fact that he thinks now, by claiming that he told Donald that he lost the election, should give him a pass and an invitation back into polite society is absolutely, it's ludicrous on his part, and it should not happen. All of these individuals, from Donald himself to Bill Barr to his complicit, you know, sycophantic followers and those that were around him in his inner circle, they should all be held accountable. But, you know, you brought up the Steele dossier. If I could touch on that for a moment. The Steele dossier, as it related to me, the 11 allegations are all inaccurate. They're all lies. Whether it was the notion that I ever went to Prague. I've never been to Czechoslovakia. I've never been to Prague. I just never been. Even members of the press started claiming, oh, we spoke to Cohen and he said that he was there. Those are all lies. And this is a problem too. Media has to be right because we rely upon the media to get it right. And when they don't, there's no way for them to retract the damage that they've done. As it relates to Steele, think about how the entire Steele dossier came into being. It was originally a Democratic opposition paper.
Oh, it was originally the Marco Rubio campaign.
Right, originally. And then ultimately,
and then when Rubio got knocked out of the primary by Trump.
No, it was originally started by the Clinton campaign, who realized that it was nonsense, taken over by Rubio, and then ultimately passed along to John McCain, who gave it to Comey, and then up and up and up. When they realized that everything that they were saying about me was wrong, they needed then to try to figure out what else can they do in order to figure out how to get a hold of Michael Cohen. Wanted to kill me. Republicans wanted Trump out, and Democrats wanted Trump out, and they thought that I was the linchpin into doing it. Ultimately, they then passed along this nonsensical argument of tax evasion, and I go into it in depth. Not only do I do it, this is not a new statement for me. If they looked at the Petrillo sentencing memo, what we gave to Judge William Pauley, they would have figured out that all of the allegations, all of the crimes that I was forced to plead guilty to were nonsensical. They were all lies. The reason I did it is because they threatened to indict my wife as a co-conspirator in 48 hours. Couldn't take that risk.
Yeah, which is, again, back to how corrupt the Bill Barr administration was. The book, which is just breathtaking. The book is Revenge, is Michael Cohen's new book. It'll be out in a week or so. You can pre-order it right now wherever you find fine books. Michael Cohen is the author, Michael Cohen 212 on Twitter, and revenge-thebook.com on the internet. Michael,